Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Shochu'sday to everybody out there. Stephen and Christopher reporting live from Japan, various parts of Japan, of course. Kanpai to get us started, everybody out there. So with my sparkling
Cheers.
water.
Not bad.
Whatever you're enjoying right now, if you happen to be partaking, and you probably should, then please leave a comment in the chat, either on Facebook or YouTube. We'd love to hear what you're enjoying and share with everybody around the world. Stephen, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Christopher. I'm still waking up a little bit, but had a earlier meeting, which has cut short my beauty rest. And I recognize that today is it's also Blues Day, right? We're wearing almost the exact same shade of blue. That was not planned. Christopher and I never discuss wardrobes before we come on the show.
That is true.
Yeah, I'm just in my Irish tuxedo, and not sure what Christopher's excuse is, but
This is a Vermont tuxedo. It's it's soft and warm and made by LL Bean, which is not a Vermont company, of course. That's Freeport, Maine, or at least that's where the outlet is. And
you say, of
I
course,
guess
like everyone knows that.
everybody knows that. Are you kidding me?
Everyone in Vermont knows that.
Yeah. We don't have our own winter wear maker. We have, well, other than Burton, which nobody can afford. But yeah, I
A
guess
buddy of mine,
it's the fat suit that we put on by eating tons of Ben and Jerry's, which is or was originally a Vermont company, and that's how we
right?
get through the winter.
A buddy of mine's a big snowboarder, and a buddy of his worked for Burton, so he used to get all this stuff.
Stuff's
He
not
was
cheap.
pretty well equipped.
Lucky
Yeah,
man.
yeah, he
Absolutely.
was.
Well, so
Cool.
yeah, I'm just sorry. I'm
It's-
I'm replying to
Yep.
comments, so that's it. Thank you for chiming in. Let me switch the banner real quick, just so without further ado, we'll move on to booze news. And
Sure.
you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, go for it.
There was an article in the Guardian, actually. Uh, let's see. Share screen. I'll learn how to do this.
Eventually, it's not as
Eventually,
easy as it is on Zoom, is it?
it is not. Here we go. All right, I'll go back to the top. Gin twist: Japan reinvents the spirit with the help of green tea and oysters. Fun little article about Japanese gin and how it's evolving. Talks a little bit about Kyushu. Obviously, there's a lot of gin being made down in Kyushu with second distillation of shochu with juniper berry and that sort of thing. Goes into komaso, which is got a few nice expressions. Got a nice map of Japan. You see where Tokyo is, and then Kagoshima way down south, where Komasa is. And then here's the Komasa brands. That's their green tea expression, and their that's the Komikan, right? That's the orange
Yeah.
expression. And they quote some guy that's got a podcast and wrote a book.
What's
And
the name of that podcast?
Japan Distilled. It says it right there in big
I've
bold
heard of it.
letters.
Okay.
Yeah. And just different aspects of Japanese gin. Nice little overview. I think it's nice to see Japanese gin getting a little traction overseas, especially, I mean, the Guardian's an English publication, and obviously gin's a big deal in the UK. So pretty cool that they got a little attention. So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what I got. How about you?
Very cool. Nice. Okay, my turn to booze news, everyone. And I'm going to booze news you with an article about our very good friend Takamine. And this made Front Burner, which is a regular column. Oh, look at this. Okay.
Oh, they did.
They put, there's a macron there now, which is
Okay,
like
that's forgivable.
yeah, hardly.
Nice.
Florence Fabricant took a shining to Takamine 8-year Koji whiskey and gave us her thoughts. Nice little, quick little blurb in the New York Times, and oh yeah, okay. So they did print a correction. Okay.
They did. Cool.
They changed the E to an I, which is very nice of them. Anyways, this is exciting just because well, anytime the New York Times decides to talk about a product that is near and dear to your heart, you have to get a little bit stoked. And the reaction has been very positive over the last 24 hours from our perspective, anyways, at Honkaku Spirit. So we're excited to just get the name out there a little bit, and hopefully more people will be Googling Joe Kichi Takamine and learning about his story. So that's exciting for us. So I'll stop sharing.
Sure. That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
And just to go back to what I was saying before, Maya chimed in. She says every New Englander knows that LL Bean is in Maine, and it is built into our DNA. So when I said everybody knows that, I was perhaps speaking for the northeastern corner of the United States, but it's not an insignificant part of the population.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of the brand.
There's a LL Bean in Kichijoji in
Really?
Tokyo, which is not, yeah, I mean, it's not Ginza, but it's still, it's not, nothing to sniff at. Anyway, not that super matters. Today, ladies and gents, if I may be so bold as to march into the main part of our story today, we are talking cocktails a little bit, and cocktails with a Japanese twist. And it's been, I think, to introduce this, obviously, you start talking Japanese spirits, and we have already been doing so. You got gin, of course, that Stephen mentioned earlier. You have whiskey, which often Japanese whiskey is a little bit too dearly priced to be dripped into a cocktail, although it really depends on the establishment. And then you've got potentially shochu, maybe even sake, that will be used as one of the bases, perhaps a split base in a cocktail of some sort. And just over the past, I guess we'd call it 6 months now, with our limited experience in the United States, we've seen a lot of things moving in a very interesting direction, especially where shochu is concerned. And I don't know if I'm stretching a bit here, but I would say that in our experience, products at 30% ABV and above have had a slightly better reach. But that does not necessarily mean that the Japan standard 25% shochu ABV is completely counted out or sectioned off from the growth, from the experimentation, from the future of cocktails mixed with Japan's indigenous spirit. That's just a brief introduction. I don't know, Stephen, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think cocktails obviously are we've heard and we've said for a long time that cocktails are one avenue in which shochu can gain traction in the U.S. And there's certainly a focus on healthier drinking, lower calorie, the whole sort of skinny girl cocktail concept, right? Which is, been talked about for several years now. And shochu's lower calorie than higher proof spirits, just because there's less alcohol in it. And if the flavor holds up in a mixed drink, then that's a way of reducing the calories of that drink.
Yep.
Right. And it's been kind of a blind spot for me. I don't have a sweet tooth very much. I'm not a big cocktail drinker generally. If I'm in a cocktail bar, I'm usually drinking like a whiskey highball, maybe a martini, something on the dry side, something that's got a little bit more bite to it, but not necessarily something that's super sweet. And yet, as I started thinking about this, and I've been, I think we're going to talk about a cocktail book in a couple of minutes that you'll introduce us to, but I've been reading through Julia Momose's and Emma Jansen's The Way of the Cocktail, and it's and also interacting with David Wondrich on Twitter and reading his columns and that sort of thing. It's and listening to their podcast, which is great. Life Behind Bars with him and Noah Rothbaum. It's gotten me kind of curious about cocktails again. It's sort of reopened that cornucopia for me. And I as I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, you know what? I used to like a mojito. I used to like a mint julep.
Absolutely.
There are a few different cocktails that I did enjoy that are on the sweeter side. And so what I've actually started doing, and we talked over the last couple of weeks about my New Year's resolution, where I don't get to drink a beer unless I've run 5 kilometers.
Right.
And so instead of like just
Crazy human.
running, instead of just running every day, I started making cocktails as my after work drink. Right, it started
Gotcha.
replacing beer.
So what
Now
have
it's
you been
probably
drinking
just as much.
recently?
Well, I started out really simple. I started out actually with gin sonics.
Okay.
So that's gin, soda, and tonic water
Gotcha.
with a squeeze of citrus, whether you're going to use
Mm-hmm.
lime, lemon, or I've been playing around with Japanese citrus as well. The one that we can get pretty plentifully here in northern Kyushu is kabosu from
Cabo
Oita,
soup.
which is got a really, really nice flavor. So I've been playing around with that, and that's sort of why I suggested the cocktails with a Japanese twist, because you can start using not just Japanese spirits but other Japanese ingredients,
Yeah.
integrating it into your cocktails. Maybe a little bit harder for people outside of Japan to get kabosu, but you may be able to get your hands on some yuzu or some other Japanese ingredients. And the other thing I started doing is making. I've actually moved on from the gin sonic. I ran out of tonic water and didn't want to invest in
Yeah.
more.
Okay.
And so I also ran out of gin. Not, I still have plenty of gin, but the gin I was using for that was gone. So so gin was sort of what I was drinking, I guess, probably early January. And then I started playing around uh, with rum. So I've been making a lot of rum cocktails. And so obviously the daiquiri is the classic, right? And Jamie Graves, who you and I uh, spoke with recently, is a big fan of the daiquiri, and he sort of got me drinking daiquiris back when I was still living in New York, and they're really good, but they're also they're small pours and they're potent because it's just rum, simple syrup, and lime juice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty potent drink especially
It'll
if you're
send
using
you
a
on
higher
your way.
proof rum.
Yeah.
And so a little easier thing to drink then would be a mojito, right? So I've been making mojitos. You can get some mint at the supermarket, and then I've also played around with just other drinks. It's been a fun experiment. And then what I did actually in preparation for this is last night I made myself a daiquiri, but with a Genshu Kokuto Shochu.
Okay.
So replacing
Okay.
the rum with Kokuto Genshu.
Was it above 40
Really,
rum?
really 38%. It's actually
Was
this
it
guy here.
38? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So a little bit low proof. This is from, who is this from? Amami Shuzo, maybe? Um, Amami Yoshima Shuzo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hama Chidori no Uta.
Yeah. Hamachidori no uta.
Yeah. So the Genshu from this, which is, it's pretty light. And so in the daiquiri, what was interesting is it actually came through more in the finish than it did. You didn't taste the spirit up front. You got the citrus and the sugar, and
Gotcha.
then the kokuto shochu is coming through a little bit, and you get a lot of the grassiness
Ah,
of the kokuto,
interesting.
which was pretty
Interesting.
cool. I enjoyed it. I might play around with proportions, maybe bump up the shochu a little bit because of the lower proof. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Always,
not bad for a first
always
try.
bump up the shochu. Always bump it up. That's. I think totally understand your comments, especially in terms of the. I don't really come from a cocktail tack either. It's not really built into my DNA, and if it's I'm one of those jerks who's just like, well, if it doesn't say the ingredients in the name of the cocktail, I'm not going to drink it. I mean, I definitely sympathize with that line of thinking for a long time. So it was basically like even martinis were a stretch for a long time for me, but I have absolutely come around, and I mean, we've seen just with some of the products in the Honkaku portfolio that are now in Death and Company and other really great cocktail bars, and it's just the magic that can be performed. I am a fan, absolutely, of all of that, and we're both tight with Shingo Gokang and the SG Club and everything that they're doing over here in Japan. So just really a big fan of all of the movement in that space, and it's just going to continue to gain momentum, and there's going to be more and more people coming in. It takes a certain amount of dexterity to deal with spirits that, if you're not going to split the base, to create a cocktail that is 25-30%, ABV for the main spirit. But a lot of the expressions that are coming out today from the shochu and awamori industry they have something in store for the home bartender. They definitely are thinking about this when they're producing these drinks, some of them. And so you just get very, very concentrated flavors and a lot more. If they decide they're going to be a citrusy or a fruity sweet potato, they go super fruity. And they figure out what flavor profile they're going for, and they work to that. I'm gonna take a moment to seg into a book that I've been reading. You mentioned Julia and Emma's book, and we're gonna, of course, preview that. We're gonna review it essentially on a future version of this show, if not Japan Distilled podcast itself. But let me just throw this up right now. That was not it. That's the wrong one. There it is. I found it. Okay. I want to talk just a moment about Tokyo Cocktails by Nicholas Coldicott, which is a book that I've been holding on to for a little while now. And it's all about cocktail culture and the various cocktails that were inspired or were born in Japan. Some of them verifiably, and others they were imported and they found fame here. But it's a really interesting book, and it does have a section about shochu in cocktails. There's no awamori that I can tell in the book, but you'd have to go to Okinawa for what's really happening with awamori in cocktails. But I just want to give you a few of the highlights from this. Number one, it's a nice little. It's a form factor that would fit in your bag, even if it is a little bit thick. I mean, how many pages? 367 pages officially. And one of my favorite pages is actually kind of towards the front, page 27, where it describes how to drink like a Tokyoite. Now, Stephen, I'm going to throw this to you first, and everybody out there who hasn't read this book yet. What do you think it means to drink like a Tokyoite?
Isn't it drink until the last train and fall asleep outside the ticket gate?
Ha! Or fall asleep on the train and sail past your station. That is certainly, in my experience, what it means to drink like a Tokyoite. Yep. Anything else? We can take comments in the. If anybody wants to throw some ideas in there, drink. Yeah, Jamie says drinking like a fish.
Oh, sorry, we're both trying to share it.
We were both trying to do it at the same time.
Yeah.
Drink like a fish. Okay.
Yeah. We got drink light beer or a highball while smoking a cigarette.
On the street.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, and then
wake up in good
that is completely on brand for Tokyo. Yeah, he gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it. This is perfect. I'm gonna. There's a list here. It's just one page, but I think it's nice and lighthearted. I'm gonna read through most of these. So, how to drink like a Tokyoite. This is interesting. The first comment: lose your friends. Cocktail bars in Tokyo are small. Many won't accept groups larger than 4, even if the room is empty. That's interesting. And there's another point that is basically read the room. If it's a super quiet bar, you should be quiet. If it's a livelier bar, it's okay to be lively, but don't necessarily change the mood on your own. It will not be appreciated unless you are an extreme version of regular. Couple more. This is hopefully self-evident that hand towel is for your hands. It's considered uncouth to wipe your face with it, but if it's summer and no one is looking, ... And I think this is an important comment. You probably can't have a Ramos gin fizz, right? You can have a Kaikan fizz, which is a famous Tokyo style fizz. What's popular abroad isn't always big in Japan, and vice versa. When the bartender begins to mix your drink, sit tight. That's not the time for a toilet break. That's a very astute comment, I feel, because so much of the experience in a proper cocktail bar, and I think this is probably true in really good joints in the States as well, there's a process, there's an artistry, there's a reverence for making the drink, and you need to be there for it, I think. So I thought that was a really interesting comment. Europeans don't toast with chin chin or chin chin because it's Japanese slang for the male appendage. And don't clink glasses, which I thought was an interesting comment. Yours might be a baccarat piece from the 1930s, and your host won't thank you for chipping it. And then after drinks, ramen is what he says. How to drink like a Tokyoite. So I thought that was pretty interesting. A few interesting cultural comments there. We could probably extend that list.
I think there's a miss there at the end though, because wouldn't it be abura soba?
Ha! I do not disagree. Abura soba is for me, if you can find a joint that's open. Abura soba joints, for whatever reason, in most parts of town are not open past 12. I don't know why that is, but yeah. So
You're reminding me of something from my book, actually. That you're right. There are things that we could add to that list probably, or enhance that list. But I wanted to specifically point out. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. When I was in a cocktail bar in Tokyo, Little Smith.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great bar.
Yeah, I just remember sitting down. First of all, it's hard as hell to find.
Mm-hmm.
It's nowhere near where the Google Map pin says it is, and it's not because the pin's not in the right location, but it's because you can't find the entrance to the building.
Yeah, you're right. It is like almost like a back or a side entrance.
And it's like B3 or something like that. It's like way down in the basement, right? So really, really odd location, but it's an absolutely gorgeous bar. Yeah. And I remember sitting down, and the moment that I sat down, I thought to myself, I never want to leave. Because the chair was so comfortable.
Yeah, they're wooden chairs too, if memory serves.
They are wooden chairs. They're about $4,000 a piece. And I think there are 27 of them in the bar.
It's like a big oak kind of elliptical shaped bar and it has a center bar, but it wraps all the way around. It's a cocoon. It's like drinking in a cocoon.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, fantastic bar. But I was just struck by the fact that they spent about $100,000 on chairs,
on the seats,
right? And watching the cocktails is just magical. And
why would you not want to be there for that?
Yeah, there's no menu. You just tell them what base you like or what you want to drink, and they'll make it. Like they can make anything.
Yep,
basically.
Yep. It's a fantastic bar. Completely agree. And yeah, so be there for the performance. I think that's a very astute comment from Nicholas Coldicott, the author of Tokyo Cocktails. I just want to talk, I'll finish up my review real quick, but just a couple other things that I think are really cool. One is he kind of talks about the nobility of the Tokyo cocktail scene over the past, I guess you could say 50 years. So a lot of names, a lot of famous hotel names, some bars that have come and gone. And it's fun. It's very light history. It's interesting to, especially if you live in Tokyo, to hear the names of these places and to hear the story behind why is it called the Kaikan Fizz? Where did that cocktail come from? And where is it served today? And of course, the U.S. military makes a few appearances in here because cocktail culture was, as you can probably imagine, largely imported, or at least some of the influences were, before it found its footing here in Japan. Another section that I love is the day drinking chapter, which talks about, it gives advice for where to go if you want a good cocktail, like a proper cocktail, and it hasn't even hit noon yet. Where do you go for that? And there are plenty of places where people in between meetings, are trying to grab a martini, on their way to the next joint, onto the next company or wherever. I suppose now everybody's on Zoom. Although, no, probably not, actually. Not necessarily in Japan. And then, of course, the shochu section, which begins on, I'm going to call it page 200, and begins in earnest on page 283. And it's not a long section, but Nicholas did go out and find, two of the, at least in terms of the real innovation and the real putting their brand behind shochu and cocktails. We're basically talking mixology and we're talking SG. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's Mr. Shuzo Nagumo, and then Shingo Gokang, in and by extension the brand manager for the SG Shochu, that trilogy of shochu, which you can see. Where are they? Down there.
You
Behind. Oh, you can't see it. You
can't really
can't see
see.
it. It's truncated on the
Hold
screen.
on. Now you
There
can
it
see it.
is. Okay, it's these guys right here. Rice, sweet potato, and barley that are made exclusively for the SG Club or for SG Shochu line, and those guys, along with Joshin Atone, who is the brand manager for that trio, are quoted in here, and it's cool. It's you could feel like they are really excited about it. They understand how to talk about it, and I think it's inspiring. Tsumugi, which is not actually a Honkaku shochu made by Sanwa Shurui, gets a little bit of a shout out. They've got a cocktail called Emulse, which is by Mixology Spirits Bang in Ginza. They've got the Japanese cocktail made by the SG Club in Shibuya, plus a few others. I think it's an interesting little slice of cocktail culture, and I'm
Cool.
glad I picked it up.
Yeah, I actually ordered my copy after you told me a little bit about it the other day, so my copy should be arriving soon. I'm looking forward to it. A question for you: is Gen Yamamoto profiled in the book at all? Because I would have expected him to show up in the Shochu chapter, but he may have ended up in a
He
different part
he
of the
he
book.
did not end up in the Shochu chapter, and
May not be easy to find.
I have not run across him yet, and I've actually read most of the book. I would say
That's
I've
surprising.
actually, yeah, it is. You're right. Now that you say that,
Yeah.
I would be willing. Hold on, well, why don't you talk a little bit about Gen? And I think I know if he's in here. I know where to find it.
Sure. Gen Yamamoto actually got his start bartending in New York City in Japanese restaurants, and eventually developed quite an expertise, and ended up moving back to Japan, opening Gen Yamamoto, just basically a bar named after himself. And it's a cocktail omakase. So basically, he makes, depending on how many cocktails you want, it's like I think either a 5 or 7 drink course,
Mm-hmm.
and they're small and they're pretty low ABV, so you're not like falling down drunk when you leave. But he basically goes to the market each morning, to the green market, and finds all of his fruits that he wants to use that day, and
Right,
just decides based on what's fresh and what's
and
in
that's
season.
exactly where I'm looking right now.
And he runs through and makes just these beautiful, beautiful drinks, both beautiful in watching him make them, the attention to detail. You know, he's in his white tuxedo.
Yeah.
He's almost, and he's got his shaved head like a Buddhist monk, and
Mm.
he's very, very austere in the decor and everything. And but it's such an experience, and really one of the best cocktail experiences of my life. And it's reservation only, and I think he does 2 seatings per night or something like that, or maybe it must be more than that because it's not that long of an
I'm
experience. But it's a
I'm I'm
really, really special one.
that's a yeah, he is special, and of course he does have a page, and I just hadn't it he does have his own page, mentions Gen Yamamoto Azabu Juban. I was able to track him down eventually, just a little bit before the tea cocktails and the shochu cocktails. But yeah, absolutely a very wise visit if you're able to get in there when you visit
Mhm.
Tokyo, Japan. But yeah, you're right. The book would not be complete without some information about Gen.
Sure, yeah. No, I'm looking forward, now that I've renewed my interest in cocktails. I'm looking forward to getting back to Tokyo and trying some of these bars. They've been on my list for a long time, but I'm often, because normally for me, I think I'm going to go to a cocktail bar after dinner or something like that, and then
Yeah.
more often than not, I'm with you and we say, there's a great little Awamori bar around the corner, so we go there instead.
Or there's a
Or
standing bar over here, or yeah, and then
right,
all of
yeah,
a
we
sudden
tend to
it's
go for
two.
things a little more casual. But I think having some of those cocktail bar experiences is something I'm looking forward to when I get back up there. And I should explore here in Fukuoka as well. I know that there's some pretty well regarded cocktail bars in this city. there's like, I think it's called Bar Oscar, makes an appearance in Julia's book, Have Not Been. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've lived here for more than 3 years now. It seems like I probably need to make a trip to Bar Oscar when I have a chance. The bar I go to most often is the Yatai bar Ebichan. It's a
Okay.
cocktail bar Yatai, and
Mm-hmm.
that's usually where I end up having cocktails if I have cocktails here
Yeah.
in Fukuoka. That also makes an appearance in Julia's book.
Yeah.
So pretty special place, and he packs up that bar every night
I bet.
and
Yeah, I'm
every
sure.
right. And you know, you go by that sidewalk during the day, and there's no sign that there's a bar there at night. And you
Hmm.
come back at about 6 o'clock, and he's setting up, and yeah, it's a fun spot. So
I bet.
um,
Just
yeah,
quickly
so
before
sure.
I wanted to share, if you know, obviously when you talk cocktails, one of the things that's part and parcel with living in Japan is the Chuhai, and we did an episode on Japan Distilled about the Chuhai last year, dropped on November 15th, episode number 25. So the second to last episode of our first
Mhm.
year of doing
And
this,
that
and it's pretty in depth, I would say. I think
sure.
if I may be so bold, when we do talk about the origins of Chuhai, which is the canned Chuhai, the Hairiki, and then, you know, if you've ever been to Japan, you've seen these everywhere. And
Sure, sure.
Coca-Cola has gotten in on the action, and we get into the what is essentially a cottage industry that's built around Chuhai culture in Japan, and it's a situation where essentially, I mean, you have companies in Tokyo that are making these syrups and mixers specifically for Chuhai culture, and
Hmm.
it's really a deep part of the drinking culture here that is sometimes overlooked.
Sure. No, that's a great point on the Chuhai. And that, actually, when you're showing your screen, you can go to Japan Distilled Instagram, and that's actually Ebi-chan from that Yatai bar
Oh, okay.
uh,
Oh,
that
is
I
it?
had
All right.
posted on the. It was on the right side of the screen when you were sharing that. But yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point. Um, yeah, it's that weird dichotomy, right? In some ways, you know, if you listen to Noah and David Wondrich talk about the dark ages of American bartending or cocktail culture in the States, it was when everything moved to uh, like syrups and sweet mixers and sour mix and that sort of thing, where bartenders were not using fresh citrus. Like
Sure.
everything was
Yeah.
commercialized and industrialized. And this is, you know, the bad old days when everyone was drinking like Long Island iced teas and you know,
There's
espresso
only
martinis,
one
or you know,
reason
all
why you
these.
drink that.
Yeah. And you know, they have a pretty dim view of that era of American bartending. And then of course
Fair. It's
craft
warranted.
cocktails are now all the thing. Here in Japan, the two things kind of peacefully coexist,
Uh huh.
right? In your standard run of the mill izakayas, you've got these chuhais being made with these syrups and, you know, industrial made products and industrial spirit with the koroi shochu,
Uh
right?
huh.
And you know, upstairs from the izakaya, you've got a world class cocktail bar, you know, where they're making all their own syrups and bitters and everything by themselves. So pretty interesting dichotomy
Mm.
when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's so many good places in this country, and I know that many other metropolitan centers are the same. But wow, just
yeah,
and
I mean,
and I,
Tokyo.
it really is a situation where you just have to remind yourself, if you go into a place and there's a lot of people there, just what are they known for? You gotta ask that question. Like, what are you
Mhm.
proud of? What on the menu, drinks menu, food menu, either, both. Try it,
Yep.
because you will sometimes just be just blown away by it. It might be a 380 yen sour, but try
Mhm.
it. You know, because
Yeah,
you're
sure.
probably gonna be surprised. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very
yeah,
fun.
bartender's choice is usually a good idea when you go into a Japanese cocktail bar that you're unfamiliar with.
That's a
Just let
good
him make
point
what he
too.
likes to make,
Yeah,
right? What he
yeah,
thinks he's good at.
absolutely.
And a lot of bars, that's an interesting thing. I think a lot of bars actually specialize in one drink. They'll make you anything, but they're known for this one drink, and that's what people go there for,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that I
So,
mentioned Tsumugi earlier, that creation by Sanwa Shirui, which has some fruit in it. So it's not a Honkaku shochu, but one thing that you can do in Japan, which you can't do in the States, is you can do tied houses. In basically, a drinks maker can open bars, shops, whatever, where they can guarantee that their products are sold. And there's what is it? What's it called? It might be Tsumugi Bar over on the east side of town. And all of the cocktails are made with tsumugi, which is, again, this before, more recently, of course, we reviewed this on Kanpai.us, Saiten, right? Before Saiten was born, they had tsumugi, which was a cocktail intended expression. And then Saiten came out, which was an actual Honkaku shochu that had enough, had it had the alcohol backbone plus the aromatics to stand up in a cocktail. And I think that's found a lot more favor internationally. It was a little easier for them it was advantageous for them to focus on Saiten at the expense of tsumugi. But tsumugi is alive and well in Japan. There are a lot of bartenders who do enjoy working with it, and it's an interesting creation.
Yeah, I think it probably needs to be rebranded if it's going to head overseas, because it's TSU.
And they spell it TUM. Yeah, nobody can pronounce it correctly. I don't know why they dropped the S. This fires me up. This sort of stuff. Like there's an easy way to do it, and then you choose a difficult way to do it, and then everybody's going to call it.
And you could just
Tamagi.
You could just choose a simpler name, right? That's always my thing. I'm always like
2 syllables.
Two
syllables. Damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually recorded a podcast episode that'll be coming out next week, and it has a lot of long Japanese names in it. And it was like chewing glass trying to get through that episode without butchering everything.
We did fine, I think.
Yeah, no, I was talking about myself.
I know
your pronunciation's always fine.
Yeah. No, I think there were very few do-overs on pronunciation of Japanese words in that episode. Fair. It was more of a just like trying to say things as simply as possible otherwise. But yeah that's going to be a good episode, I think.
It will. Yeah, we'll let you guys wait and figure out what that's going to be about. Actually, if you look at, again, the Instagram, you might have a hint.
Yeah.
But speaking of these tied houses, for example, there was the Tories bars all over Japan. There was something...
Right, that's a classic example.
Unbelievable number of, essentially, these bars owned by Suntory. I think I read that they had something like 15,000 bars across the country. It might have even been more than that.
It was a lot. I don't remember the number, but it was in the thousands.
Yeah, every little hamlet in Japan, it seemed like, had a Tories bar back in the day. And an iconic one just closed, actually. The Nika Blenders bar in Tokyo just closed.
Did it?
Yeah. Suntory still has a couple of places. There's a Suntory highball bar here in Fukuoka. So there are a lot of these tied houses still exist in Japan because there is no prohibition against it. You can do both.
Yeah, you cannot do that in the States. It would be everywhere if you could.
True.
There would be a Jim Beam bar like in every city.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you think about it, it's almost like, why isn't there, like, for, I guess you have the one thing that you do have, you have your, what are they? The brew pubs, right? Where they brew their own beer. Right. And those are essentially tied houses because you're drinking in the facility that makes the alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there aren't like Sam Adams bars all across the U.S. There aren't.
Yeah, there aren't Budweiser bars.
Yeah.
I mean, there are bars that prominently feature Budweiser, but the thing is, you can't no tied houses. You can't basically force the establishment to be using a particular brand or a particular product, which, coming from a pre-prohibition Wild West, and even the East was the Wild West back then in the States, and I can kind of get it, just because money's going to rule the day when resources are not equitably distributed, and so you have to. That's the spirit of a lot of these laws, and the folks that protect the 3-tier system in the States will say, oh, we have to. It's equitable, it's fair, it protects the consumer, it makes sure that there's no dangerous product being made of it. No, it's all about taxes and everybody getting their damn margin. But Yeah, it doesn't really benefit the consumer. The consumer benefits from an open and free market, which the alcohol industry in the States is not.
Sure,
So
sure.
anyway, that's not the topic of today's
Yeah.
conversation.
If I can just have one, I'm going to share John's comment. He did say, "Careful with cocktails, though. The sugar in the liqueurs and bitters will get to you." Yeah, and I've started making my own
Fair.
simple syrup from high quality Japanese sugar, which is another thing, kind of like using Japanese citrus. Um, if you use a really high quality sugar, you're still getting the calories from the sugar, and you still have the ramifications of
Absolutely.
mixing sugar and alcohol if you drink
Absolutely.
too much. But using those higher quality products, I think, really elevates the drink as well. Um, and so I've been making my own simple syrup to make these drinks, and it's been fun. And I'm using like just a really high quality Japanese sugar, not kokuto. I think kokuto probably has almost a little bit too much minerality to it.
It can get a little grassy and a little bit, yeah, a
Yeah,
little rocky.
yeah.
So
So I'm using something a little bit more refined, but still high quality. Maybe I'll figure out the name of it and make
you
an
can brand
Instagram
it
post about it or
yourself,
something.
you know.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah,
And but
let's
and also just to John's comment, I when I just as when I was having a beer at the end of the day, which is what I've sort of been replacing with cocktails, I did have a beer. I'm having a cocktail, right? I'm
beer.
not like I'm not continuing to drink cocktails all night because that would be a very, very bad decision. Way too much
Maya
sugar.
Maya asks you, have you tried Coco Syrup? That's interesting.
I
You could, and you,
probably. Oh, as far as in my drinks, I have not, but
oh,
I should play around with that.
yeah, that's a good idea. Hold on. Why, when you share a comment and I'm not
Hmm.
on the comments tab, it asks me if I want to close the comment. But if I share a comment and I go to a different tab, it doesn't. I have to go back to the comments tab to unshare it. That's kind of weird. Oh, we both just did the same thing. Stop it! Hitting it at the same time. So
Trying to
uh,
help you, man.
Nicholas Coldicott was talking about afternoon drinking. We're gonna do some morning drinking. It's time for a
Ah,
shochu expression. This time,
Shochu'rakuen.
shochu rakuen. This is box B, and we're trying a barley shochu made by Tenpai in Stephen's home prefecture of Fukuoka. This is
That's
a
right.
25% ABV expression, and it is on the back. It's called Craftsman Tada Spanish Orange. So I think we're gonna get some fruitiness here. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
The neck sniff. Okay, lots of barley with maybe a little bit of fruitiness. We'll let it open up for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this distillery a little bit. Both of us have been there. You've
Um,
been there more often
yeah.
than I have.
I adore this distillery. I really do. I They're not that far from Fukuoka City. It's about probably a 40-minute drive and about an hour and a half to 2 hour bike ride.
Hmm.
And I've biked there quite a few times because I go down the river down into the south part of the prefecture, and then you shoot off the river at one point and you get up to the foothills of the mountains, and the distilleries there. And he's a wild man. Everything he makes is 100% barley,
Yeah.
and yet he can do magic with it. He's got so many different flavor and aroma profiles that he comes up with, and this craftsman series that he's been doing is really all about playing with fermentation time and temperature. So he'll run, shochu typically, as we'll say, it's usually a 4 to 7 day first fermentation and a 10 to
Yeah.
15-day second fermentation. Generally, those are depending on what you're making, but Kokuto Shochu a little bit shorter. Um, but generally, those are the parameters. He'll do 45-day low and slow fermentations like a sake brewery.
Yep.
And yet these are open fermentations. A lot of the low and slow sake fermentations are in very cool rooms in closed tanks. He's leaving these things open in Kyushu for that long, but he's doing it in the winter, when it's generally cool in the distillery, and he just makes such interesting drinks. Just using that, his parameters are it's got to be 100% barley, and then everything else is time and temperature, which is really, really cool. And yeast, he plays around a lot with different yeasts.
Yeah, he must. I mean, just to get this aroma profile.
Hmm.
That's interesting. It's a little milky. It's obviously it's just barley. You notice that right off the
Right.
top. That's the first note.
Yeah, sure.
But then there's a milkiness, there's a vanilla quality to it. There's a little bit of a citrusy note there. It's Spanish orange. It's so interesting. There's no oranges in here. That would not be allowed for Honkaku Shochu, as most of you out there listening right now will know. And always fun is to look at the pairing
Oh, sure.
the pairing notes. Oh,
Yep.
it is this page. This page. So I don't know if you can actually see that. I'm doing a really bad job of showing this because this is flipped. It's not like Zoom where my right is over there and my left is over there. It's opposite. It's a pork roast with shiokoji rub and rolled in lettuce. This is on page 38, just so you know,
I got it.
in the booklet. And it looks pretty nice, although it look few vegetables on the side. This is recommended. What is this? Wakakuta. Is the Wakakuta? Interesting. The proprietor's name is Kakuta apparently, so Wakakuta is the name of the place, and of course that's gonna go well. I think the pork and the vegetable notes alongside this slightly fruity barley, sweet barley.
That looks
smell.
That looks delicious. I still need to start making these recipes. This is really where I've started to where cocktails have become fun for me again. I realized that in making cocktails, I always,
Impressive.
back when I was younger and I'd make cocktails at home, I just thought more was better. So I'd put in more bitters, I'd put in more rum, whatever it was that I was working with, and the drinks got off balance. And now I follow it like a recipe, and they come out much better.
Yeah, I'm sure. Have you tasted this yet?
No, I haven't.
Go ahead. Morning, AM drinking.
Oh, wow.
It's got a honeyed sweetness there at the end. That's pretty typical tenpai expression. Just way more than you imagine. Oh, it's a barley shochu. It's gonna be like it'll be like this. No, it's not. Not if he made it.
Yeah, that's right. They do have one barley shochu in the States. It's called tenpai. I don't know how readily available it is anymore, but it used to be pretty common in New York City. And the first time I tried that, it's just like yeasty dinner rolls. That's what it tastes like. Just really bready and delicious. Really fantastic barley shochu. So if you can track that down, you should.
Trying it with sparkles.
Oh, that's a great idea, actually. My sparkles are way too far away.
Ooh, yeah, that'll work. That's a good one. Another good one. Thank you, Shochu Rakuen. You have not disappointed us yet, and I believe that is what number is that? This is our 9th from the series. 9th of those expressions, all in these little 300 milliliter bottles, and we got a lot more of them to go. So thank you for sticking around for that. I wonder if they'll do this again. I mean, it seems to have done okay this year or last year. I wonder if it'll make a return appearance. Anyway,
I'm a little. We haven't gotten to it yet. I'm a little bit annoyed though because Tekkan said he was going to send me some of the Rakuen Yamato Zakura Rakuen bottles.
And he did.
He hasn't sent. No, he just sent me a box of oranges. but he hasn't sent me my shochu yet.
Tech guy, if you're watching this right now, I know you're not. Then you owe. I'm gonna say both Steven and I, me one bottle and Steven at least a case of the Yamato Zakura expression that's in Rakuen. It is coming up soon though. Is it in this box or is it in the next box? B or
Good
C?
question. I'm not sure.
I feel like it's in the first set. Anyway,
I've already tried it, of course, because we had it at least I had it at Reina's place at Yokoban last time.
Oh yeah. She had them all lined up, didn't she? I forgot about that. I didn't try any of those.
I think when everybody at the bar realized that I helped make that shochu, the bottle was gone in about 12 minutes.
Yep.
It's number 17 is Yamato Zakura.
So it is in this first half. Okay, we'll get there before halftime.
And we will tell that story when appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. This is good. Sorry, one of our longer episodes. I guess we get more excited about cocktails than I thought we would. I'm glad we finally did a book review, and there will be more of these coming. This comes recommended. The Tokyo
Yep.
Cocktails by Nicholas Coldicott, and we have more things to recommend. So I think the next time it's on to you, Stephen. Next book review is yours.
You got it.
Yep. And we'll
Can
be
do.
back again. We'll be back again very soon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, both on YouTube and Facebook. Japan Distilled, next podcast number what? 29?
29, I believe.
29 is dropping
Yep.
on Monday next week, and I think it's a good one. It's definitely in our style and one of the topics that we have often talked about, but the flow was good on this one, so I think everyone will appreciate that, and it's a bunch of good stories. The next time we'll see you, I guess, is next Wednesday, Japan time, probably Tuesday evening, wherever else time. And until that time, from both Stephen and I here in Japan to all of you out there around the world, a very, very hearty and heartfelt kanpai.
Kanpai.